What is up, guys? It's Dan the Man, and today I'm going to be recapping one of the Tuesday rated games held here at Chess Zone between myself and an individual actually out of state from Tennessee. For some reason, he showed up at Chess Zone out of state, and which is usually not a common thing. Usually we have locals coming here, but we had an out of stater named Blake Splitter. Very interesting last name. Could be viewed as intimidating, yeah, he's from Tennessee, and he had a rating very slightly above me of 2 rating points, and I didn't know anything about this person, so couldn't really have a feeling of how the game would go. So we were sort of feeling in the dark about you know how the game would progress against such an unknown opponent, particularly from another state. Maybe Tennessee 1800s are higher or more underrated than us Georgians. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump straight into the action. So I begin the game. Let me turn the sound up too so you guys can see. I begin the game with e4, and Blake responds with c5, going to the Sicilian. After knight f3, knight c6. I actually play the Alpin, which is one of the main lines of the Sicilian. I don't go d4 right away, and I'm preparing to back it up with a pawn next turn. So here he plays the move d5 to challenge the center directly, and I think in a recent game of mine, I don't remember the exact game, I pushed e5 here, and which is a move, but it's not as common. I want to say it was my game against Joseph Francis, but I could be wrong. But anyway, I just have a memory of playing e5 recently. I instead trade in the center, and after the queen takes, I play the move d4. And I've played this very common in bullet. I often pre-move the sequence. So d4, Blake plays knight f6, and I play bishop e3 just to add some more defense around my d4 pawn. And here, Blake plays the move bishop to g4, which is a very good move. He's double attacking the knight, and I'm pretty much forced to go bishop to e2, so I don't have doubled pawns. And I was expecting Blake to probably, move the pawn to prepare to castle. Even castling long is okay, but it's not the greatest move. Here, Blake plays a move that is, no offense, just a straight out horrible move that I was not expecting at all. And it's not hanging a piece, but it's not great for a lot of reasons. Blake here plays the move, I think you guys can see based on the screen. Blake here plays the move c4. And c4 is a bad move, again, for more than one reason. It's, number one, you're overextending that pawn, and that pawn is going to become a target in the next couple moves. And number two, knight b to d2, how are you going to defend that pawn? It's all of a sudden just a straight up weakness in the position. And the only real way to defend the pawn, okay, I guess you could throw in knight a5, but then Engine here just says to castle and ignore the knight being on a5, and you're just all of a sudden just huddled over that pawn for absolutely no reason. c4 is just inviting white to pile up on that pawn and gain a very big advantage out of the opening. Blake here plays the move b5, which makes sense. He's trying to defend the pawn. But another reason why that move is bad is because after a4, I'm undermining the pawn chain. I'm undermining the defense of the pawn. His queen side's also falling apart. Let's say he takes here. I mean, I'm just straight up. Even though the material is even here, the c4 pawn is gonna fall. I'm gonna have rapid development. I'm gonna castle, and I'm gonna have a overwhelming majority on the queen side. I have a pawn's weak. I'm threatening to take on c4, castle, bring the rooks to the center. It's not pretty for black. So a4 was best, and here he can't even play a6 because after this, the rook would hang at the end. So he can't really defend his a pawn. So he actually played the best move here. He played the move b4. And I'm just like, okay, let's just take on c4. And we're just going to be up a clean pawn right out of the opening and having a +4 advantage, which is something you never or almost never get against 1800s right this early on. So after bishop takes c4, also I should mention Blake had significantly less time than me at this point, probably at least 15-minute gap. I was moving pretty quickly here. I had like 58 minutes and he had 43. So here he played the move queen to d6, and I simply castle. And I don't really have, even though it's +3, my plan here is just to play normally, and do normal things like, bring the rooks to the center, get my pieces to better squares. There's not like any sort of major tactic working in the position. It just happens to be this good for white, despite only being up a pawn. So, Blake here played the move e6, which I thought he would have done instead of c4. He played it now for some reason. And I just decided to go bishop e2. My idea was to have the knight go to c4, because I thought it would be better having the knight on c4 rather than the bishop. Here Blake plays bishop e7, knight c4. And instead of bishop e2, one of the top moves by the engine is the move bishop to b5, and the idea is to pile up on the knight. So let's say black tries to kick you away. You have this move bishop to f4, not one of the best moves, but it certainly is a move. You have the move bishop f4, and the queen can't take because you would take the knight on c6 with a fork on the king and the rook. So black has to keep defending the knight. But then the engine here suggests this brilliancy knight c4, sacrificing the bishop in order to go knight b6, hitting the queen and hitting the rook, and just utterly dominating the black position. But bishop b2 is sensible. The white position is so flexible and so comfortable that virtually any sensible move, such as what I did, even though it's considered an inaccuracy, is still perfectly playable. So bishop e7, knight c4, queen d5, knight c to e5, trade, and here, after a few trades, Blake finally castles his king. And here the best move is c4, which I was looking at to attack the queen and gain some space, having these nice pawns controlling the center. But I was kind of, worried that the queen would sit on e4, and, I don't know, I kind of didn't want the queen there for whatever reason. So for that reason, I kind of blundered my advantage pretty significantly, if I must say. I played the move bishop to g5, and I was a +2 position. Now I'm only +1. But over the board, I didn't think it was this good for white. I knew I was better, but not by marginally that much. But yeah, bishop g5, it's not quite accomplishing as much as c4. It doesn't really do anything. And the reason is that black should take, and then my c-pawn all of a sudden becomes backwards. Black should apparently bring the rook to c8, attack the c-pawn, and my pawn is all of a sudden a target because I can't push the c-pawn because I'll drop the d4 pawn. So all of a sudden I have to start playing defense. But instead Blake plays the move a5, which I frankly don't understand. So a5, I just bring my rook to the center, and I was preparing to play c4 next turn because my d-pawn would be defended by the rook. Blake's playing kind of very mysteriously. He plays this move queen a2, just teleporting the queen to a very, off-sided part of the board where it's out of play, I must say. And sure, he is threatening the a4 pawn, but his queen's like stranded. There's no reason to bring the queen over there. It was just another weird move that I saw. So I played knight c6, and my goal here is to, let's say black defends the bishop. I would just trade, and at the end of the day, I would have these doubled pawns, and black's king is pretty weak. So after bishop d6, I had 49 minutes in this position, and Blake had 27. So my timing advantage is growing, as well as my positional advantage. So as I mentioned earlier, my goal is to double the pawns and then infiltrate with the queen to play queen h4 and attack the weak f6 pawn. And there really isn't a whole good way to defend the pawn. The only real way is to go king g7, but then I would probably, maybe just repeat. And if king h8, maybe I would just do a rook lift. A lot of things are not the best move, but one of the ideas that I had in mind. So king h8, queen h4, he instead grabs the pawn on b2, and I play queen takes f6 check, king g8 is forced, and here I play the move rook to d3. And rook to d3 is actually threatening checkmate in 2. I'll show the point. So let's say black gets greedy and starts taking your pawn. You can mate in either of two ways. One way is to sack the knight, deflecting the bishop from g3, and then playing rook to g3 mate. Or the other way is to play this first, which I think is more flashy because you're sacrificing more material, and then playing knight e7 like this. So that is my threat. This is because the bishop is overworked. So rook d3, Blake played rook f to c8. That way his king can flee to f8. So that way the tactic doesn't work as quickly. But rook g3 check is still playable here. I mean, I didn't play it, but it is still possible. But it requires much more precision and accuracy. So rook g3 check, bishop takes g3. You have to play the move knight e7 check, king f8, and after f takes g3, even though Blake's up point of material, his king is virtually getting checkmated. So that was a faster way that the game could have ended. I instead, after rook f c8, I first play the move knight e7 check. And knight e7 check, I'm like, okay, I was more focused on winning material. And the bishop can't take the knight because it would, again, not stop defending the g3 square, which means I could bring my rook over here, the only winning move, king f8, and actually the bishop would block the king escaping, which means queen h8 is a checkmate on the board. It's because the bishop on e7 is blocking the way. So for that reason, Blake did not take my knight and played king f8, but it doesn't really matter because after knight takes c8, I am up a whole rook. He can't even take back because I would just bring my queen over here and win his second rook. Black's position is totally collapsing, and I'm going to win in the next few moves if he would play it out. So seeing no better option, Blake decides to resign the game here, and we get a pretty chill win in the Tuesday rated game. I don't really think I was under too much stress or any sort. I mean, maybe the bishop g5 moment where I sort of let up my advantage, but besides that, we were pretty smooth sailing. If you look at the accuracy here, I had an 85.3, and Blake had a pretty stinging accuracy, pretty subpar accuracy of 69.6, which isn't great, but we all have those games where we play poorly. But I'm sure Blake has played games that this is just one of Blake's off games. I'm sure he's played many other games with much higher accuracy. This just wasn't it. And yeah, this was just a pretty chill game, and I finished relatively early. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say thank you guys for watching. If you like content like this, please don't forget to smash that subscribe button. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the game or anything else you would like to add. And yeah, have a great rest of your day or night. Bye.